Alright.
Is it rolling?
Yeah.
Alright. What's going on, man?
Mickey Rourke, dude.
The man, the myth, the legend.
Every Tuesday, we record a podcast episode.
On Mickey Rourke?
Oh, no, just in general. It's just every Tuesday, dude.
Every Tuesday?
Yeah. You know, it'd be like, well, it's been, last one was in August. Well, Tuesday didn't come around, so.
Like 20 Tuesdays.
Finally came. No, this is the first one. Okay, we're back. There's a cop chase that we just saw. And I guess we're all fired up for this. So, yeah, we're talking about Mickey Rourke. And I'm Matt.
And I'm Matthew.
And my buddy is the one who specifically wanted to, or got me into Mickey Rourke because, well, I'll let you kind of explain.
Yeah, guys, Mickey Rourke, man. Where could we start? Where should we start? So, how did you find out about Mickey Rourke, Matt? When did you first see Mickey Rourke?
I don't know if the first thing I saw him in was Iron Man 2 or Pope of Greenwich Village. I think I might have seen him in Pope of Greenwich Village. I think I saw Iron Man 2 first, because I remember when I first saw Pope of Greenwich Village, I was still pretty young.
Yeah.
But I actually thought for the first 20 minutes that Eric Roberts was Mickey Rourke, because I guess Eric Roberts in that movie as a younger person looked more similar to old Mickey Rourke than young Mickey Rourke did. And then I realized after the fact, and it's funny now going back, it's very obvious that young Mickey Rourke is this Mickey Rourke. There is a pretty easy comparison. You see that he looks different now than he did, but you could definitely still see the same facial structure, especially the way that he talks.
Yeah.
But yeah, you don't get a whole lot of him as an actor really in Iron Man 2. I think he does a serviceable job in that. Admittedly, I haven't seen that movie in a long time, but I really like Pope of Greenwich Village. I kind of like a lot of those smaller, character-driven films that are set in an urban environment like that from the 80s and 70s. I wouldn't say it's like a mob movie, but it kind of feels like a mob movie. I think Roberts sort of gets caught up with loan sharks at least, right? So,
yeah, it's like a little baby Mean Streets.
Yeah, that's a good way to describe it, and I really like Mean Streets. So, yeah, Pope of Greenwich Village was great. I think that's kind of a criminally I don't know if it's underrated. It's certainly overlooked, though. I wish more people would see it. But, I mean, ultimately, all the movies we're going to talk about besides those two, I would not have watched unless you kind of sold me on Rourke. So I kind of want you to talk about how you found Rourke and why you wanted to do this episode.
Yeah, so the first Mickey Rourke movie I saw, unfortunately, was Stormbreaker. It's not a Mickey Rourke movie.
That might have actually been the first Rourke movie I saw.
He was the villain in it.
Yeah.
I think, when did that movie come out? It came out
2004 or something, probably.
Yeah, so I was 7 years old. But at that time, I didn't know who the guy was. But I got into Mickey Rourke when I was about 4 years ago. I was on YouTube one day, and you know how YouTube does recommended videos or whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was just watching movie clips that day,
Mm-hmm.
and there was a movie clip for The Pledge, the Sean Penn directed movie starring Jack Nicholson. So I clicked on the recommended clip, and it was a little scene where Jack Nicholson's character, who was a cop, investigating a missing child case, and he has to interview Mickey Rourke, and it's a 2-minute scene, and Mickey Rourke's only in the movie for 2 minutes.
Yeah.
And he plays a grieving father who's longing and missing his daughter, who's been kidnapped for many years now, and he's trying to get over that grieving process. And in that scene, he just displays all kinds of emotion. He displays happiness, sadness, anger, all within 2 minutes. And that's kind of just his performance just kind of grabbed my attention. So after that, I just started looking up, his IMDb, his filmography. So I started with his early stuff, and his first movie I saw was, I think it was Pope of Greenwich Village, and I really liked it. I really liked his work. I really liked his charisma, his talent. So I saw his other stuff, Angel Heart, Rumblefish, Year of the Dragon. I was just hooked. I saw The Wrestler. I've seen it years before, but I rewatched it with a new light, and I don't know, it just made me appreciate it more, watching it from the new light. And yeah, man,
You say he's your favorite actor? At least for the time being?
Yeah, I say he's my favorite. Just the talent he had, his ability. Damn, I can't even think right now.
I got you.
We'll just start over.
No, we'll just keep
Sure.
rolling. I mean, if we really have to, we can cut, but this one's going to be a little bit more spontaneous, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned Year of the Dragon and Body Heat, or you mentioned at least Year of the Dragon and Rumblefish. I think Rumblefish is probably one of the more well-known ones. I think Year of the Dragon is almost a little more obscure.
Yeah.
But I'm curious about how you found Angel Heart.
Angel Heart?
Because I never knew that movie existed until you told me about it. I can almost kind of understand why I never knew it existed, but I'm curious how you actually found that, if there's any significance to that.
I just looked at IMDb and I just saw that was one of his movies he did in the 80s.
You just scrolled down, you're like,
Yeah,
huh.
I just looked it up, found it at a disc replay, bought it, watched it, and I liked it.
You're like, huh, Mickey Rourke and De Niro were in a movie,
I don't know.
and nobody's ever talked about
I
it.
would never thought about that.
And you think that movie probably played some, at least minimal role in inspiring the first season of True Detective? That was kind of your thought?
Yeah, it's like a lot of similarities, like the setting of the
Yeah.
story, in the South, Louisiana,
Yeah.
the satanic cult aspect to it,
Yeah.
the detective, just the vibe of it, just, the look of it, the themes. You could definitely tell True Detective was inspired a lot by it.
Yeah. Obviously, this is speculative, but it certainly does kind of feel like a little more of a rough draft, but just a different interpretation of a very similar idea. Rourke plays a private detective in that movie, and he's sent to go investigate a case that's in, like, I guess it'd be called, like, the deep bayou of Louisiana.
Yeah.
But it treads very similar ground geographically to True Detective. And I could see how they would pull some of the imagery from this movie into that first season of the show. I guess that's getting a little too on a tangent. So we can just start then with...
Should we start with his biography? A little bit about his life?
Yeah, I can just run through his childhood, and if you want to get into his stint with the acting school that he went to.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of reference his Wikipedia page for some of this stuff, but it doesn't actually go into the same detail that we're going to go into from this. A lot of the stuff I'm about to say you can find, and I'll link it in the show notes, but you can find it from Alec Baldwin's interview he did with him on his podcast. So he said he was born in upstate New York, but he was pretty much raised in Florida. And
Miami.
yeah, and he mentions that his mom married a guy who, to paraphrase what Rourke said, he really thought he basically called the guy a mean son of a bitch. And he then said that was kind of a good outlet for the boxing.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess he used boxing to kind of deal with maybe some emotional conflict that he had there.
Yeah, because growing up in interviews, he would always say that out of his siblings and step-siblings, he was always the weakest one.
Yeah, he said they could all kick
emotionally,
his ass.
and physically. Yeah. So he was like a very frightened child.
Yeah.
And he just wanted to prove to himself, to his stepfather, and just to others that, he could fight, he could, like, stand up for himself. So, like you said, he took on boxing to get rid of his anger.
Yeah.
Lash it out.
And we're not going to spend a lot of time on this right now, but it's a touch point we'll come back to later when we talk about maybe how he chose to use his emotions with his performances. But basically when he was around 16 or 17, he got a concussion, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor said that he needs to take some time from heavy contact sports, otherwise he's going to do some permanent brain damage.
Yeah.
He took a lot of beatings in boxing kind of throughout his life. But yeah, that was what sort of spurred him to go into acting. I guess he met somebody who, it was like a coworker of his, because he worked in construction, I guess, at that time, and
After the boxing?
yeah, I'm trying to remember how
How he got into the acting?
Yeah.
So it was like, after he got the news from the doctor, they're like, hey, if you keep on boxing with this concussion,
Yeah.
you might, you're possibly going to kill yourself. So he quit, and I guess he was saying one day he was at the beach, and an old friend of his from school came by and said, hey man, I'm doing this play for my school that I'm directing, and the lead actor dropped out. Can you fill in his spot? So Mickey Rourke had never acted before. So he's all right, why not? And he did the college play, and after he did it, he enjoyed it. He got the acting bug.
Yeah.
So his friend was like, hey man, you're pretty good at this. You should take this really seriously. So Mickey Rourke took his word, and his sister gave him $400, and he moved to New York. And for like 4 or 5 years, he was just kind of like bumming around,
Mm-hmm.
working odd jobs, taking little private classes with Sandra Seacat. She's a famous acting teacher, and she was known for being one of the Actors Studios teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah, in the Actor Studio, that was a really famous acting school that, who were some of the people that came out of that?
yeah, it's like the epitome of like acting school. It's the home to actors like Al Pacino. Did Marlon Brando go there?
I know he mentioned him. I don't know, but I know at least Pacino did.
Pacino, Robert De Niro, Christopher Walken, Harvey Keitel, Meryl Streep.
Yeah, those are a few names that have been around a while.
And it's a very difficult school to get into.
Yeah.
Like thousands of people audition every year, but only like 4 or 5 people get picked out of thousands.
Yeah.
So it's very intense, very competitive. And once you join the school, you don't pay for any of the classes. It's free, and you're a member for life. So like it's pretty intense. So Mickey Rourke, he really wanted to be in that school because a lot of his idols like Robert De Niro, Harvey Keitel went to that school, so he wanted to be part of that as well.
Yeah.
So his teacher, Sandra Seacat, who teaches there and went there herself, was like, hey, if you really want to do this, you gotta practice. And the scene he wanted to do was from a play called Cat on a Hot Tin Roof. And there's a scene where the main character confronts his father. And I guess Mickey Rourke was having trouble doing the scene because he couldn't relate to the father figure because his real father was never around. So it was hard for him to like get into the scene.
Yeah.
So his teacher, Sandra Seacat, was like, hey, if you really want to get this scene down, you gotta find your real father.
Yeah.
So he went to go find his real father. So one day, this is what he says. He says he was at a White Castle, and he sees a guy that he recognized, and I guess it was his father who was magically there too.
Yeah, this is a good story.
So he was just kind of like standing there, still kind of like freaked out, like, oh shit, that's my father. And he hasn't seen him since he was like 5 years old.
Yeah.
And at this point in his life, he's probably like in his mid to late 20s.
Yeah.
So after his father had ordered his food and walked out, he just followed his father down the street, and he finally got the guts to come up to him. So he went up to him, like, hey, aren't you my father, so and so? And the guy's like, yeah, I am. So they met, they talked, and I guess he said they went to like a bar or a restaurant just talking for like a few hours, and I guess his father gave him like $50. And after that, his audition to the Actor Studios was the next day, and Elia Kazan, who's a legendary director who was one of the people hosting the auditions, he had said that Mickey Rourke's audition was the best audition he's ever seen in his whole career. And after that one audition, he got in. Because for like a lot of actors like Harvey Keitel, it took him like 7 tries or 8 years to get into the acting school. Mm-hmm. So just from that one audition, that already showed like Mickey Rourke's natural talent as an actor. But so he trained at the Actor Studios for a few years. After his training, he decided to move to Hollywood, move to film, and his IMDb says that his first film was Love in the Hamptons. It was a little video short he shot, like a short film, probably like with college students. But his first feature film was 1941, directed by Steven Spielberg. It's a World War II comedy. And his role in the movie is not very large. It's just like more of like a background character. Mm-hmm. But that was his jumping point into acting.
And then his first significant bit part was Body Heat, then, right?
Well,
I guess we go chronologically. There's like a made-for-TV movie, it looks like, or
yeah, he did like a lot of TV movie stuff.
Oh no, so he did do quite a few things.
He was in Heaven's Gate with
that was Chimino,
Christopher Walken. But yeah, like his first like big, like you said, significant role was Body Heat.
Yeah. And it's funny, in a lot of interviews, he says that his initial reaction to giving performances in some of these relatively high budget productions. I mean, not compared to like blockbuster films, but something like Body Heat or the other movies he was in, those are not student productions or anything like that. He said that his initial reaction to it, he just said, like, that's it? Like, wow, this is pretty easy.
Yeah.
Like, I guess he didn't feel like it was really complicated. And that's something we'll talk about later. But, yeah, he kind of broke out with Body Heat. He only had a scene that's about 5 minutes. You can find the scene on YouTube, and I recommend it. It's a really good moment. It's cool to see him really, really early on.
Yeah.
He kind of had that same exact charisma. He's also, like, a super... I mean, right out of the gate, he's charismatic, and he's got the look. I mean, he's got swagger, dude. He had everything to be a huge, huge star right out of the gate.
He should have been. He was supposed to be. He was the chosen one.
Yeah. He
was the Anakin Skywalker of acting. He had all the potential, but went to the dark side.
Or just went to nothing. I don't know. But right out of the gate, man, his performances captivate you the whole time he's on screen. After that, he did Diner, and I've only seen that once. I didn't see it until like 3 months ago. It's easily one of my favorite movies of all time. Mickey Rourke aside, that's a great movie. The cast does a great job. It's cool to see a young Daniel Stern before he was in Home Alone, because that's the first thing I knew him from.
Yeah.
All these guys were, I think Rourke was a little bit older, but all the guys in the cast were like 21 to 23 or something. I think Rourke might have been in his mid-20s or something.
Or like late 20s,
yeah,
early 30s.
But great in Diner. He kind of plays a similar character. You don't get a lot of information about his character in Body Heat, but he's got the same kind of cadence to his speaking, and he seems to have the same air about him. And that's kind of a trend in a lot of his movies. He plays a character that you wouldn't have to try that hard to find similarities between the other characters that he plays generally. But anyways, after Diner, I guess it was Pope. Rumblefish, which was Coppola, right?
Yeah, the year after Diner.
Yeah, that was fairly well received, I believe. Then Pope of Greenwich Village, which is a very overlooked movie.
I feel like Pope of Greenwich Village was his first time actually being the main character of a movie.
Yeah, that was basically his first leading role, and he absolutely delivered. It's a very, very good performance. Him working with Eric Roberts. Eric Roberts kills it, too. Mickey Rourke says that that's his favorite movie he's ever made, I guess, to date, or at least the date of the interview he did with Baldwin, which was in 2016. So I assume it probably still holds true. But he said that Eric Roberts is the hardest working actor he's ever worked with.
Yeah, him and De Niro.
Yeah.
Even though he doesn't like De Niro anymore, but we could get back to that later.
Yeah. Then he did another Cimino movie, Year of the Dragon. And this kind of gets into an idea that I sort of wanted to touch on. There's a lot of... I don't know, man. Other than Diner, a lot of his early movies feel rough in some way or another. Like in
the themes, or like the way it was like shot?
I think more logistically, like technical aspects. I think either editing or directing or some sort of shot composition, they aren't super clean. So sometimes they can kind of feel a little bit like a mess. He's in a movie called Angel Heart that we're going to talk about shortly. But Year of the Dragon, I think, is similar to this in that Pope of Greenwich Village, I think, was very quaint, so that movie didn't really, I think, suffer from the same issue, but something like Year of the Dragon or Angel Heart, they can kind of feel like a mess at times. But the reason why I want to emphasize that is, in one respect, in pretty much every movie I saw prior to doing this podcast episode of Rourke, no matter how the movie was, I was always able to understand the emotional subtext of the scenes because Rourke portrays it very, very well. Like I said, Year of the Dragon's pretty messy, and I think Angel Heart was just shy of a fucking disaster, I think. I never felt like I didn't understand what was going on because Rourke is very believable in the performance that he gives, and it's really easy to empathize with his character. Not necessarily sympathize, but you can understand his emotional arc and why he feels the way he does in his movies, and that's super invaluable to the film, but it's also something that I haven't ever felt as strongly with any other actor. I mean, my favorite actor is De Niro. I don't know if I'd ever feel that way about performances that he gave either. Same thing with Joaquin Phoenix. He's one of my other favorite actors. Yeah, Rourke sells emotions in movies, like seemingly no matter what the themes or the content of the movies is.
Yeah.
So yeah, he was in Year of the Dragon. That was another Cimino collab. That would have been the third one, right? Or was that... Because he did 3 with
Cimino?
Yeah.
That would be his second collaboration with him.
What was the third one that he
did? The third one was, it was the remake of Desperate Hours in 1990.
Okay. Got you. Yeah. Mickey Rourke, he mentions in a Larry King interview, which is also really good to listen to. You can find it on YouTube. He says that his favorite directors work with is Cimino. Pretty sure that's how he says it.
Coppola.
He said that he's never met a director who had the same kind of fire under Cimino. And that kind of says something that's interesting, or maybe brings up some potential conversation points about Rourke, because seemingly a lot of people who are associated with Cimino and his productions don't like him.
Mm-hmm.
We talked about Deer Hunter last time, and how a lot of people, outside of the actors, a lot of people who were involved with the production of that film thought that Cimino was kind of a prick.
I think it's because the reason Mickey Rourke might have liked Cimino's style is because, one, he's a boxer.
Yeah.
He likes being in intense and he likes being in intense and hard situations.
Yeah.
He wants a challenge. And Michael Cimino's probably like a very like challenging director, like demanding a lot from his actors.
Yeah.
So Mickey Rourke probably brought his sports mentality to his acting.
Oh yeah, he certainly could. But I think it's also interesting how like Rourke felt like he could relate to Cimino a lot, and Cimino also pretty much fell off.
Yeah.
After that string of movies in the 80s kind of flopped. It's just something kind of interesting to think about. But Year of the Dragon, he plays a detective. I don't know if he strictly focuses in Chinatown, but he pretty much is in Chinatown the whole time. And he's a straight cop. He's struggling to deal with the fact that all these other cops seems to be more so looking out for themselves than the good of the people. There are some good moments in that movie. I think it gets kind of overblown at times, but there's a lot of really good quiet moments. And again, the emotions are really believable. There's a scene, it's been a bit since I've seen it, but his longtime partner, who he's kind of growing apart from, they have that moment in the office with their commissioner.
Oh, I think I know what scene you're talking
That
about.
scene is so good, and it kind of comes out of nowhere.
He like just racks stuff out of the desk.
Yeah, like the movie up until that point feels like nothing is really surprising what happens. There's kind of some shock value in how brutal the shootout scene is in the restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
But up to that point, everything that happens is kind of expected and not particularly noteworthy. But that scene, he sells emotions, man. Like, every movie we're gonna get to, there's gonna be points where you could say this. It's so believable the way he acts, and again, like I was saying, because he sells it so well, it's easy to still follow what's going on, even if you couldn't explicitly say exactly why characters are doing what they are and why they are where they are in time. On the whole, you kind of can follow along through how he's feeling.
Yeah.
Angel Heart, I think, is a rougher movie than Year of the Dragon. I think there's a lot of editing and directing issues that make the movie a little more uneven. And that movie kind of exponentially spirals out of control as the plot gets more revealed. It gets more complicated until the very end, when Rourke's character has the realization that he's basically been played, and this was like his destiny. But even through all of that, there's a lot of crazy edits and cuts in the movie. And like I said, there's some like continuity errors with some shots. Through all of that, it is so easy to follow along with Rourke's character. And it doesn't feel random the way he portrays the character. It all feels very justified. And I don't know, in a movie like that, I don't know if you could put another... Oh, sorry about that. I don't know if you could put another actor in that space and have it be the same way. Have it be as effective. Because I think without his performance in that movie, I think that movie is totally gone.
Do you think he outacted De Niro in that movie?
I think that's a hard case to make because De Niro's not really in it that much. That was kind of
the scenes he did with him. Like, do you think he outshined him?
I think De Niro's character, for the sake of the plot, was very, very reserved.
Yeah.
So De Niro didn't really even get a chance to do much. He kind of just like twiddles his hand and rolls an egg open and eats that. It would have been cool to see them in scenes more. I think they're actually only in scenes together maybe three or four times. Yeah. And every time they're in scenes, they're good scenes, but it doesn't have the same weight. Like years later, when Pacino and De Niro were in Heat, the scenes, they're only in scenes for a couple times each.
In Heat?
Yeah.
I think just two scenes. With the diner.
The diner in the end.
Yeah. The shootout.
Yeah, those scenes I think they get a little more out of them being together than this. It would have been nice to see more. Angel Heart was directed by Alan Parker. We talked about Mississippi Burning, I think, a little bit last time.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I guess our podcasts are just about Michael Cimino and Alan Parker.
There's a funny story for Angel Heart.
Yeah.
Because Mickey Rourke, when he was in acting school,
Yeah.
one of his idols was Robert De Niro, so he always looked up to him. And for this movie, he finally had the opportunity to work with one of his idols, his heroes that he looked up to very much. So I guess before the movie, it was during pre-production.
Yeah.
He went up to De Niro, all excited, and he went up to him, was talking to him, and Robert De Niro was like, "Hey man, whenever we're on set shooting, don't ever talk to me."
Yeah.
So like, when Mickey Rourke heard that from his idol, that must have been very soul crushing. Like, damn, like this is the guy I looked up to, and this is how he's talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So after he heard that, he just wanted to prove to De Niro, like, hey, you know, I'm not just a kid, I'm not just a punk.
Yeah.
I could stand up to you. So Rourke would always say, before he would shoot a scene with De Niro,
Yeah.
the night before, he would stay up all night, rehearsing his lines, just preparing for the scene. So when the day comes, when he would shoot a scene with De Niro, he'll be ready to go. So people will say that De Niro was finally outacted by someone in a movie for the first time by Mickey Rourke. So I thought that was pretty funny, a little interesting.
Yeah, there was a little bit early on this year, I guess, where Rourke said he wanted to kick De Niro's ass.
Yeah.
Because he supposedly barred him from being in The Irishman when that was originally in the talk.
That would be pretty cool to see Mickey Rourke in The Irishman.
How about seeing Mickey Rourke and De Niro fight?
Who do you think he would have played in The Irishman if he was actually cast?
I don't know,
Harvey
man.
Keitel's character? Like that 2-minute scene?
No, I feel like Keitel would have stayed. Scorsese and Keitel have been tight for a long time. Like, Keitel was in his first movie.
What was the last movie they shot together? What, Last Temptation of Christ? Him and Keitel?
Last movie they shot together?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Harvey Keitel playing.
I gotta think he's been in something since then.
He played Judas in the movie?
In Last Temptation of Christ?
Yeah.
I actually haven't seen the movie. I need to. It's hard to find, actually.
Playing a Bible character with a Brooklyn accent.
Well, yeah, I mean, and isn't Willem Dafoe Jesus?
Yeah.
It's an interesting. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we're not gonna get into that. There were a lot of riots with that movie, but apparently, I guess, religious scholars have studied that movie and said that it's pretty accurate.
Really?
Yeah, apparently.
Oh wow.
Yeah. It'd be interesting. I still want to watch it. That's one of the Scorsese movies I haven't seen, but I feel like he's got to have been in something else since then.
Keitel?
Yeah.
Scorsese?
Yeah.
I think that
It seems odd that it would just be that long. I mean, I know he wasn't. He wasn't in The Departed. I know that.
I mean, Robert De Niro became his boy, Scorsese. It became tight. He kind of pushed Keitel to the side a little bit.
Well, I mean, De Niro was in Mean Streets though, which was in '73, and then Keitel was in a bunch of movies for a while after that. I don't know. Maybe. I don't think he would have replaced Keitel. Maybe Ray Romano.
Nah.
Probably not. Ray Romano is a good actor too. I'm glad that he's getting some different roles. To be honest, man, I have to rewatch the movie and see what person he could replace, because it seemed like everybody fit their role fairly well.
Yeah.
And I don't think he'd replace Joe Pesci. I think that's like an icon.
No, that's.
And Joe Pesci did well enough. He's like a very old senile man who doesn't seem very capable of anything. He just sleeps in the car for most of the movie.
No, he played out of characters he usually plays, or like very loudmouth, crazy.
Yeah.
As in Irishman, he was very quiet, very subtle.
Yeah.
Spoke more with his actions versus yelling all the time.
Yeah.
Which is very nice, very different for him to do.
Regardless, I would have definitely enjoyed seeing Rourke in that. Has he been in a Scorsese movie?
No.
I wonder if he'd somehow be in Killers of the Flower Moon. I doubt it, but that'd be cool. What could have been? We're going to talk about some movies that supposedly he turned down in a little bit.
He would have been good at Goodfellas as Ray Liotta's character.
He would have been good
like in his prime.
Anybody's character in that, I feel like.
Joe Pesci.
Honestly, man, he could. I think.
Yeah, probably, yeah.
That's the thing. I'm so confident in how he could portray like emotions in a scene that I could see him in pretty much any role, honestly.
Do you think that he plays almost like the same character in all of his movies?
Well, that's something that let's finish going through some of the rest of these movies, and then we'll talk about that, because that's something I do want to talk about. Okay, so after Angel Heart, he was in Barfly.
Let me see.
It's a biopic. I don't know how strictly it adheres to
Yeah, Barfly was after Angel Heart.
Yeah.
Same year.
What's the guy's name? I know his name's Charles Bukowski in the film, but I don't think that's actually the guy's name. I think that's...
No, that's the real guy's name, but in the movie he's called Henry.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So it's a biopic of Charles Gronkowski. He's a poet. I'm pretty sure. And...
Yeah, he's like a poet, right?
Yeah, and he's basically just a drunk who kind of meanders around. And what's his co-lead? It's not Faye Dunaway, is that her name?
I think it is Faye Dunaway. Yeah, it's Faye Dunaway.
Yeah, they have good chemistry, and it's basically just his relationship with her and seeing how he... This movie also, again, he sells the emotions really well, and I think compared to the rest of the movies, I think this is probably one of the more different roles that he played.
Yeah, it's very different.
He's got a lot of body language that kind of sells that he's just this drunk bum, essentially.
He's straying away from the pretty boy look.
Yeah, and he used a lot of facial expression. He's basically perpetually beaten up.
Facial hair, messy hair. He looks dirty. He looks like he's been taking a shower in weeks.
Yeah, he walks like a fucking goblin.
With the little limp.
Yeah.
He's like finally kind of playing like a weak character versus his other characters like in... Well, I mean, You're the Dragon Maiden. Well, he wasn't like a strong character.
No, he like...
Angel Heart.
You could say almost like weak emotionally, and he's very, very reserved in this compared to his other roles. Even Body Heat, as short as that role was,
he was very like...
He's pretty emotionally strong. This movie, he's very subdued pretty much the whole time.
He's very tired.
Yeah. Well made, I would say. I probably won't watch it again, though, just because there's really no evolution in the characters. There's, like, no character arc. They pretty much stay the same people the whole time. And for me personally, it's not particularly interesting. But again, if you watch this movie, I think it's at great risk of that character seeming like a cartoon almost, with how exaggerated he is. But again, I believe it when Rourke delivers lines and stuff. It all works to me. And honestly, maybe it's because I was really trying to look at his performances more than otherwise, because we're doing an episode specifically on him.
Yeah.
But this is definitely at least one of the strongest times I can remember in looking at an actor's filmography that I really felt like I totally bought their emotional component in their delivery.
Yeah.
After that, we skipped over me actually. After
You're the Dragon, 9.5 weeks.
Well, 9.5 weeks was an erotic drama.
That's like one of his most well-known movies.
That is, yeah. I think reluctantly he
haven't seen that one.
That's one of his most well-known. I'm actually not sure what the reception is on that. I think it was good though.
I heard good things. That was like his most well-known movies from the 80s.
Yeah, but he was in a movie called A Prayer for the Dying.
Yeah, right after Barfly.
Okay,
1987, all three of them, Angel Heart, Barfly, all in the same year.
Yeah. So supposedly A Prayer for the Dying was sort of a turning point where if up to that point Rourke was developing a small reputation for being potentially hard to work with, supposedly A Prayer for the Dying is kind of what sent it over the edge and affected sort of his availability for some roles. I guess there was a lot of controversy with his beliefs regarding the conflict in Ireland, because it's based on the IRA. It's like, how would you specifically phrase that movie? Yeah, you want to go to the summary?
No, it's about like Mickey Rourke was like an ex. Well, he's a member of the IRA in the movie.
Yeah.
And he's done a lot of bad things, his character, and he's just tired of killing people, just doing evil things, and he just wants to get out of that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So the whole movie is just him trying to like escape from that life, trying to turn his life around.
Yeah. So essentially in the movie, it's kind of kept very present that he plays a character named Martin, and Martin is tired of killing. Even if there's some way you could justify it, he's just tired of it. He thinks it should stop. It's almost I think it's a little heavy-handed in how constantly he says it. Just, I think the script-wise thing, I think it was a little too heavy-handed. And I guess there were some conflicts surrounding this movie because apparently his beliefs around the conflict, people associated with the production felt that it was kind of odd that he would get involved at all, and supposedly they felt like he was out of place in it, like kind of who was this guy trying to get involved in this conflict or have any sort of opinion when it doesn't affect him at all.
I think he was donating money to the IRA.
He ended up donating, I guess, his entire salary from the movie to that cause. Yeah. And I guess it was interpreted when it came out that he was being sympathetic to his character.
Yeah.
You see somebody? Is he being scared? That's a big. Oh, it's not a Jeep.
Big truck.
Where do you think they're going? Value City Furniture?
Does anyone come out?
Well, I heard a door slam.
Yeah.
Is that the trunk? We're gonna get
all
shot. It'll be recorded. Yeah, supposedly he. What is happening? My fucking. Hang on. Sorry about that. Supposedly, his beliefs surrounding that conflict made it seem like he was sympathetic towards the side that, I guess, by the end of it was decidedly in the wrong. I'm being very vague about this. But the point is, if that was how he felt back then and that was how he verbally expressed it, if you look at, if he's asked about it in interviews now, he'll say that he was being sympathetic towards his character.
Yeah, I think he got a tattoo as well.
Which I think feels kind of defensive. Maybe, I think he's proud of the work that he's done in that movie, but I think he treads very lightly about how he acted around that time. And I think a lot of how he acted around that time was also related to his perceptions of acting as a whole, which again we'll get into when we're done with talking about this. But A Prayer for the Dying is it's one of the closest things he ever got to doing an action film. It's quieter than most action films, but compared to a lot of the stories that he played in up to that point, and even later on in his career, it's one of the bigger scale. Is there another cop chase happening?
Another one?
Yeah. We'll get 2 for 2 tonight.
Same guy.
He got back in the truck. Like, we told you to go to the police station and follow us. Why did you not? Compared to some other stories, a lot of the stories that he did up to this point were very character-driven. Even Angel Heart, which has a pretty complicated, intertwined, almost whodunit plot. It's like a mystery film. It's more of a character study than specifically plot-driven, I think.
Yeah.
Prayer for the Dying is very plot-driven. It's still got character, and Rourke still has a lot of time to just express in general emotionally. But it was refreshing to see a movie that he was in where the story was kind of large. And it really made me wish that he was in some bigger kind of blockbuster type movies. He was in one other movie that we'll probably talk about, I'd imagine, until we get to after he leaves for boxing, then comes back after boxing, and then leaves again. But yeah, he's in a movie called Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man. This is absolutely the most high concept movie that he was ever in.
High concept or like high budget?
Well, high concept is like the idea is high concept.
I think lowest concept.
Well, maybe low IQ, but no, like high concept refers to the idea that it's meant to be very easy to understand, so it's easy to market. It's a very straightforward kind of action film. It's got a lot of stereotypes. He plays a character named Harley Davidson. Don Johnson, his co-lead, plays the Marlboro Man, and they're dressed like those characters. There's a girl played, I don't remember the actress' name, but she plays a character named Virginia Slim. There's a big guy who's their friend named Jack Daniels. So you kind of get the idea. And
it's probably like one big commercial.
They basically play, I guess they're criminals who periodically go and do heists together, and they end up robbing an armored truck. And I think Daniel Baldwin is in the movie, right?
Yeah, he's in the movie.
And it ends up that Daniel Baldwin is working for Tom Sizemore, who's running an operation that's shipping out this crazy drug to the streets of...
to little kids.
Wherever the fuck they are. Does it even say, are they in Vegas or something?
I think like in Los Angeles or something.
Okay, wherever the hell they are, there's this random blue drug getting shipped out, and Daniel Baldwin's wearing like a Kevlar dress, essentially, and running around with an AUG. It's very overblown. Again, though...
Mickey Rourke always says, like, this is a movie he despises the most.
But it's the one that Bob Dylan likes the most, apparently.
Yeah, Mickey Rourke, he always says, this movie, he regrets it. He hates it with all of his soul.
Yeah.
He says he always did the movie he took the money like a whore, he always says in interviews for the movie. But I guess he said he met Bob Dylan at something at a party.
Yeah.
And Bob Dylan told him, hey, man... my favorite movie ever is Harley Davidson and Marlboro Man.
Oh, his favorite movie ever?
His favorite movie ever.
That's a big honor, dude.
And Mickey Rourke's like the most interesting man I ever met. And his favorite movie is Harley Davidson and the Marlboro Man.
He's probably thinking, you could have said 9.5 weeks. Why'd you have to say that?
Well, honestly, it's a fun movie.
Well, no, again, here's the thing.
You could just kick back and just...
It's goofy as fuck. But Don Johnson and Mickey Rourke are great together.
They got great chemistry.
And considering the terrible dialogue they have to deliver in this movie, like Don Johnson's Mickey Rourke gives him a Desert Eagle as a gift, and Don Johnson's a really good shot. And one of the gimmicks in the movie, or one of the jokes, is that Mickey Rourke's character sucks at shooting a gun, which I think is kind of funny because Rourke always plays a kind of a more relatable, serious character, and he's just comically terrible at shooting in this. there's a point where he tries to shoot a motorcycle. It's like literally 10 feet in front of him and he misses. And Don Johnson's like, you just yank the trigger. You gotta squeeze the trigger. Don't yank it. It's not like your dick. He, like, random things like that. And Don Johnson, he repeatedly brings up his father in the movie. So the Marlboro Man brings up his father. And he always refers to him in the context of, before my father left this god-awful, shitty world. I think that's verbatim how he describes his father every time he brings him up. So there's a lot of, like... Even through all that, I still buy how Mickey Rourke acts in the movie. And Don Johnson is great, but I'm saying, like, specifically in Mickey Rourke's case, it's a great pair. And I buy what he says. There's one moment in that movie where they jump off the roof of the building, land in the pool.
Oh, yeah.
When they come out of the water, Rourke just says, man, that's a rush, isn't it? That felt so believable that I doubt that was scripted, because considering how retarded the rest of the dialogue is, there's no way that could possibly be scripted. But that moment, why did that feel so real? They're running away from, like, explosions and gunfire from these comically out-of-place weapons and guys, and they jump off a roof into a pool
like
that's very
40
small.
Story.
Yeah. And they're fine. I think, doesn't Don Johnson, like, land on his back or something? Like, and they come out of the water and Rourke just looks at him. He looks up, he's like, totally almost like a brother-to-brother moment. Like, dude, that's sick, wasn't it? Like, that felt so real to me. And it's actually a pretty funny bit. Like I said, the joke in the movie is that Mickey Rourke can't shoot at all. And there's a point at the end where it's the big, it's like a, I guess, what is it called? A Mexican standoff? Is that what that's called?
Well,
Don Johnson's getting held at gunpoint.
Yeah, by the neck by Daniel Baldwin.
Yeah. And Rourke,
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler for this 1991 movie that you probably won't watch. But you should. It's fun. It's like Fast and Furious, but, like, definitely dumber, but it's still very fun. But yeah, there's a standoff, and Don Johnson's getting held at gunpoint by Daniel Baldwin. And Mickey Rourke is, like, 20 feet away or something.
Probably closer.
And he's got a Desert Eagle, because for whatever reason, they decided that the gun that Don Johnson was going to shoot... Wait, no, he doesn't have a Desert Eagle, right? You know, he has his revolver.
A revolver.
Yeah, he has a revolver that flips down. This is like an 1800s gun for some reason. Like,
in a 1990s setting.
Yeah, it's like that's also part of the joke. It's a lot of visual comedy where he's got to take a dumb amount of time to reload his gun because he decided that the gun that he wanted to use... I don't know how they ever managed to pull off any heist ever using that gun. And I mean, I guess Don Johnson probably did all the work because he's a really good shot. And he loads up the gun, and he's got to try and shoot Daniel Baldwin in the head. Obviously, Don Johnson's head is right next to Daniel Baldwin's head. And there's a moment, and, you know, Don Johnson mentions earlier, you got to squeeze the trigger. Like, you got to be gentle with it. Don't yank it. Remember, it's not your dick. And he just looks at Mickey Rourke, and he says, squeeze the trigger. Mickey Rourke takes aim, and he squeezes the trigger, and he shoots Don Johnson in the arm. And I'll be honest, I thought it was gonna, just based on how predictable everything was going, I thought he was gonna finally pull it together and shoot him.
Right in the head.
But no, he just shoots Don Johnson in the arm. So there's like comedic moments that land with this movie. And at the end, randomly, they're up in a skyscraper with Tom Sizemore, and I don't know where this helicopter comes from that's got a Gatling gun attached to it, just shoots out the room, and then there's basically a Die Hard ripoff scene where Tom Sizemore, the villain, is dangling from Don Johnson's boot. And this boot is a set piece because Mickey Rourke continues to ask about it. Why do you wear those boots? That one's got, like that one is basically falling apart. He's having to retape it, and you know why he's got the boot, so that at the end, the bad guy can be holding onto the boot, and then the boot can rip off. And he falls exactly like Alan Rickman in Die Hard. But it looks a lot worse, obviously, because it's in the daytime and it's like really bad effect. But I kind of feel strongly about this movie because...
I feel like Mickey Rourke's gotta give it another chance.
Oh, dude, he absolutely should. Again, this movie was goofy as shit, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, but like I said, I bought how he was acting. And I bought how Don Johnson was acting. That fight scene at the beginning, like there's a fight scene at the beginning of the movie where they're in like a pool house. I guess it's like a roadhouse kind of thing.
It's like a bar.
Yeah, and Don Johnson gets in a fight with, I guess they're trying to make him look like a Native American guy or something. But he gets in a fight and Don Johnson's all suave and cool, and he's kind of under control with the fight, and then the guy slashes him, and he actually cuts him.
Yeah.
And John Johnson gives what kind of feels like a genuine reaction. And honestly, the choreography of that fight was pretty good. It could have been way worse. It could have been like a Tyler Perry edit or something,
Yeah.
But there is no reason why this movie had to be as dumb as it was. It was almost like they had a good concept and they had good actors, and they consciously made every decision to make the movie as tropey as they could possibly make it.
Yeah, the potential to be like a Lethal Weapon or something.
Get rid of the fucking stupid names.
I feel like the names would have been fine. Just
I don't know, dude. Calling somebody the Marlboro Man.
Harley Davidson.
You can just call him Harley. But yeah, and Mickey Rourke is wearing like a motorcycle racing suit pretty much the entire movie. And Don Johnson's wearing his get-up, which, again, he's supposed to look like the Marlboro Man. So
like a denim jacket.
Yeah, he's got, which is more passable than Mickey Rourke's outfit. He's, like, walking around in
sunglasses.
In, like, Vegas and shit with like, a racing suit on. I'm sure it's not what... I'm sure it's, like, kind of something you ride with a motorcycle, but, like, if he was really, like, a hardcore biker, he'd probably be wearing, probably, like, a cut-off sleeveless shirt, maybe, like, a headband, probably sunglasses. But it's like they make every conscious effort to make the movie done. I was talking to my uncle about this when I was in Virginia talking with him, and it got to a point where he's like, you bring that movie up a lot for how much you say it's bad. And I couldn't realize why. And then I just realized it's because I was mad at how stupid it was. It didn't need to be that dumb. It could have been better. But again, it was fun to watch Rourke handle himself in a higher concept film. Like, it's very plot driven. There's really no character development or character driven moments at all. It's just, see how he handles in a bigger plot like that. And based on how he performed in that and A Prayer for the Dying, he absolutely could have done some big-ass budget movies.
No, he has the goods to do small budgets and big budgets, and that could probably lead us into some of the movies he's passed over.
Yeah.
I feel like
let's talk about Wrestler first, because then I think that's going to kind of transition to just all the other speculative conversation, because ultimately I think those are not exactly confirmed, but they're heavily believed to be what they were.
So I mean, after that, like through the 90s, that was like his lowest point in his career. So after that, he decided to go back to boxing. He was just tired of the acting, just of the business. He thought making movies was about making art, just making about just some good quality stuff. He wanted to do quality things.
Yeah.
And I guess he realized that it's all about making money, and he didn't like that. So he started acting up, became difficult to work with, and producers just started to blacklist him, like saying, hey, don't hire this guy. He's very difficult. He's going to just make a scene on set.
Yeah.
So also he just found acting to be very easy to do. It's like a walk in the park. And he just felt like it wasn't a challenge for him. He just wanted to be in a rush. He just wanted to be challenged, wanted to be thrilled.
Yeah.
So the only way to do that was to go back to boxing, which was his first love, actually, before acting. So he quit acting for a bit, did boxing, and he was like in his mid to late 30s by that point.
Yeah.
So he was fighting guys who were like younger than him. So his little stint in boxing in the 90s wasn't that great. And he did some moves in the 90s, like, Harley Davidson, the Marlboro Man.
That was kind of like right before I think that movie was kind of basically the point at which he just took a very significant hiatus from acting. And then he came back and did a bunch of bit roles and stuff like The Pledge.
He did Bullet. It's a movie with Tupac, a crime movie.
Tupac, Mickey Rourke, Harvey Keitel, and Adrian Brody, and the guy that played Buffalo Bill, right?
No, Harvey Keitel.
But it's Harvey. Yeah, the guy that plays Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Apparently, Adrian Brody, Mickey Rourke, and him are brothers.
Yeah.
Can you imagine that? I haven't seen this movie, but I feel like I need to just because of... I just want to see how they interact. Yeah.
Him and Tupac were good friends. Mickey Rourke and Tupac, they were like very, very close.
And nobody knows this movie exists, I feel like.
It's a very under-the-radar kind of movie.
I feel like other than Diner, maybe, I don't know how many people you could ask who know that these movies exist.
Not that many, because his movies, like... You would think Mickey Rourke was like a big actor, but he actually wasn't a big actor in the 80s. All of his movies, like, Angel Heart, Rumblefish, Pope of Greenwich Village, they were like very indie, low budget, low key movies.
Yeah.
They're like movies you probably find like at a, I don't know,
At
local
a furniture store, like we
Yeah.
bought some Blu-rays at.
Unfortunately.
Like a used furniture store. That's where I bought like a couple Blu-rays at. Man, it's a shame, like, because you have to go out of your way to look for a lot of these films, but you dig a little bit and you go through the movies that he was in the 80s and you see this just unbelievable body of work. Again, like I said, a lot of the movies I don't think were particularly great. I thought Diner was great. I thought Pope of Greenwich Village was pretty close to great.
He had a good run in the 80s.
Yeah,
like,
dude.
The quality,
all
like,
of his performances, no matter what the movies were, he was great. Even Prayer for the Dying, he plays a guy with an Irish accent. I think some people criticize his accent. Some people thought it was okay. I think he smartly was pretty quiet in the movie. He didn't speak a lot.
Yeah, spoke more with his actions.
Gives him an opportunity
face.
to act with his body language. And I thought it was good. It was believable.
Same with Johnny Hanson. We forgot to mention that one.
Yeah, I haven't seen that one.
That was right before Harley Davidson. This one, Johnny Hanson came out in 1989, and Mickey Rourke plays a robber, but his face is very disfigured because he was born disfigured. So his nickname's Johnny Hanson because his face is very disfigured.
Yeah.
And he's quote unquote ugly. So one day, him and his gang of robbers, they rob a jewelry store, and his best friend is murdered by one of the jewelers on their team, so they got like double crossed.
Yeah.
So his best friend got murdered, and he gets arrested. And when he's in jail, he has the opportunity to be part of this experiment to like change your face in order to reduce his jail time. So he does an experiment, and he does like a facial surgery, and it makes him look like a normal person again. So after that, he decides to get revenge on the people that double-crossed him and his friend. It stars him, Morgan Freeman. What's that guy's name? Forrest Whitaker. He plays the scientist that does the surgery on Mickey Rourke.
That's cool.
And it wasn't
Sounds like another high concept film.
Yeah, it's like it's an actiony kind of movie. It's more like a fun kind of kick back, enjoy kind of thing. But like you said, he did a great job just portraying his emotions. And there's this scene that's very powerful when after he gets the surgery done, because like I said in the beginning, his face is very disfigured, and his character always had like trouble just being in front of people because he's always felt ashamed of how he looked.
Yeah,
very self-conscious. So there's a scene where his face is all wrapped up, and Forrest Whitaker, the doctor who did the surgery on him, is slowly unwrapping his face to show him how he looks now with the new surgery. And
he's John Travolta.
No. Mickey Rourke. And so Forrest Whitaker, unravels the wrapping from his face, and he gives Mickey Rourke a mirror to see what he thinks about how he looks now. And Mickey Rourke, he's like happy, sad. He's like just crying tears of joy, just to be like, hey, I could finally be a normal person for once.
Yeah.
Not be self-conscious of how I look. He didn't like say any words at all. He was just saying all the emotions through his eyes. And like you said, like that's just the power of Mickey Rourke, just displaying emotion. That's just. Yeah. I thought that was it's a great movie. Well, it's not a great movie, but it's a good, enjoyable movie.
It justifies its existence.
Yes.
Okay.
Mickey Rourke carries.
I'll check that one out then, because I keep seeing that. That's actually on Prime, I think, right now.
But yeah, like you said, to the 90s, doing boxing, doing little roles. So he quit boxing again. And at this point, he was just at a very low point. His boxing career wasn't that great. He hasn't done great work in a while. So there's a story where he says that he was at a restaurant in Hollywood, I believe, or Beverly Hills. And he's eating, and Sylvester Stallone walks in, and he walks up to Mickey Rourke. He's like, hey man, I'm working on this movie called Get Carter, and I need someone in the movie who looks like they can kick my ass. So you want to be in my movie?
Yeah.
Mickey Rourke's like, sure. So he does the movie, and I guess Mickey Rourke wanted to get paid a certain amount of money.
Yeah.
But the producers wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
But Sylvester Stallone really wanted him in the movie. So in order to keep Mickey Rourke in the movie, Sylvester Stallone cut some of his own pay and gave it to Mickey Rourke so he could be in the movie. So that was like a little starting point for him of his comeback.
Yeah.
So he did like a little role in that movie in Get Carter, and he did like a lot of bit roles. Like you said earlier, he did a little role in The Pledge.
Yeah.
It's a movie directed by Sean Penn, starring Jack Nicholson. It's got some big names. It's got like Jack Nicholson, Benicio del Toro, Aaron Eckhart, and Mickey Rourke makes a little cameo. 2 minutes, but he steals the whole movie. It's like a 2-hour movie, I believe.
Yeah.
And it just shows the power of his talent and just his acting to steal a whole movie from someone like Jack Nicholson in just 2 minutes. But
yeah. And after he took that pretty, like, the point where he started to essentially just take a significant hiatus from acting, since then he's pretty much not come back even remotely similar capacity to acting. He did play a significant character in Sin City, almost unrecognizable in that movie, but he's like the big guy that just takes all the punishment and doesn't die. And then he also came back and he starred in The Wrestler, which we'll talk about in a second, but there's an interview that he did with Piers Morgan in 2008, I guess right around the time The Wrestler came out. And I'm pretty sure it's this interview, but he mentions at one point in the interview that it got to a point, he was getting so disenchanted with Hollywood. He said it got to a point where he couldn't pick up a drink or pay for a check on his own.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not a psychologist, and this is very speculative, but based on what he said about how his childhood was, I imagine he probably felt like he didn't have a lot of self-worth acting full-time. He mentions in Alec Baldwin's podcast that he said he felt like a coward when he quit boxing. Maybe in his mind he felt like he had to go back to boxing so he could sort of carry his own weight, if that makes sense. Because he mentions in that podcast, and I guess pretty much in an interview that he's done where they ask him about his initial reaction to acting, is he said he was shocked at how easy it felt. So maybe he felt like he was kind of being a softie.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's basically since then gone back and forth between acting. He said, like, oh, I'm going to try and come back, and he's gone back to boxing. He's basically still, I guess he's still boxing, just not in like a high capacity. I think he just kind of goes back and forth between them. Mm-hmm. But I imagine, growing up in that environment, if he said that his stepdad was a mean son of a bitch, he might have imparted some amount of insecurity on Rourke. I think there's something to be said about one thing. It depends on who you are, but it's kind of, there's a question of, do you value somebody who's more of a jack of all trades, where they're pretty good in pretty much any role, or they're great at one particular role? And like I was saying, all these characters were technically different, but I think you wouldn't have to try that hard to find a lot of similarities between them. And I think Rourke is the case of somebody who's really good at playing a particular kind of character.
Yeah.
But he might have also been vulnerable to, if he had a lot of really difficult emotional conflict about, his upbringing or basically how his whole life has been.
Mm-hmm.
The characters that he played, you could see him tapping into those emotions for the performances, and he might have almost put himself more at risk for feeling the way that he felt, because he was basically forcing himself to feel those emotions for the sake of the scenes. Because he mentions in Alec Baldwin's podcast that he was, well, maybe you mentioned it too when he was talking about the scene with his dad. He was trying to do a scene, and he felt like he couldn't relate to the father character until he started to think about his relationship with his own father.
Then she was like, you gotta find your real father to like...
Yeah, and I guess you tap into that part of your emotions, and then you can deliver the performance, but, it's also a heavy thing to have weighing on your mind, And so, yeah, I think there's a chance that maybe what partially contributed to him stopping acting in the capacity he was, because he was, let's just get into it now, and we'll just talk about the movies that he supposedly turned down, to give you an idea of things that he could have been in.
He probably just wanted to like live life. He just probably just how the Hollywood lifestyle it was all phony, and he just wanted to live as a human being, as a man, like you were saying earlier. Like, he didn't want to be looked at as a softie, so he went back to boxing to actually just feel pain for like once in his life, whereas like he's just pretending to feel pain in movies.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's probably like just,
I don't know, maybe he felt like he wasn't earning it or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, because if you think about it, they're both entertainment essentially. You know, boxing is something that people go to watch.
I know Marlon Brando said that acting is not a man's profession. And I know he looked up to Marlon Brando a lot, too.
Yeah. Brando supposedly repeatedly always apologized for being an actor. So I think that's kind of a similarity between the two of them. They probably felt part of them felt kind of scummy for being so successful doing something that seems so insignificant.
Yeah.
You know, but that's just how Rourke, again, this is speculation, that's how he perceived it.
They have similar arcs, too, to, like, the whole career. Like, Marlon Brando, when he first debuted, he was, like, talented. You know, he had all the goods.
Yeah.
Then he fell off a little bit.
Yeah.
Then he came back with a performance like The Godfather.
Yeah.
Then Mickey Rourke came back to performance like Sin City, Wrestler.
The Wrestler.
And then after that, they just kind of went back to the abyss of darkness.
Yeah. Rourke basically comes out of nowhere. And do you want to talk about the movies he turned down first? Or you want to talk about The Wrestler real quick? Because that'll be the last movie we talk about.
Let's talk about The Wrestler, then we could jump into...
Okay. So, Wrestler. I guess Darren Aronofsky approached him, right, for the movie?
Yeah, that was his first choice.
Yeah, and then Rourke looked at the script and wasn't a fan of it because he felt like the way that the characters were talking to each other as professional wrestlers, based on his boxing background, didn't really make any sense. When you watch this movie, I'm not a massive fan of the movie. That might be I'm not a huge fan of Aronofsky, I don't know. But Rourke is amazing in this. I watched it with my mom and she cried when he was talking on the pier with his daughter.
Oh, yeah.
He just, again, if there's ever a clear example of how he sells emotions, it is unreal, his emotional delivery in this movie.
And he's funny in a movie, like in the deli, when he's like interacting with the customers, like the things he says.
Yeah. So,
like the ladies, there's one scene where this lady's ordering chicken.
Yeah.
And she's like, I need 2 breasts, 2 big ones. Then Mickey Rourke was like, yeah, 2 big breasts. That's what I need too. It's just like...
Yeah, and again, it doesn't feel forced. It feels like something that he would say.
Yeah.
So I guess for some context, if you haven't seen The Wrestler, Mickey Rourke plays, I guess technically a professional wrestler, but he was once a very, very popular kind of primetime wrestler, and he's been doing it for, I guess, the better part of 30 years probably. And he's still trying to make do as he's getting older, and his body is not willing to respond to it the way that he wants his mind to.
Yeah, it's like the movie's about Mickey Rourke in a sense. Like, it's very metaphorical.
Yeah.
Like you said, like the wrestler, the guy he's playing.
Yeah.
Was very prominent and dominant.
Yeah.
In the 80s, but kind of fell off, and his character's just trying to like relive his glory days, even though he's way past his prime.
Yeah.
And he's just aging, physically and mentally. And
if there's ever a performance that almost seems autobiographical in a sense, this is probably the best example you could think of. Rourke ended up rewriting a lot of the script with Aronofsky, and like Matt's saying, it's for the sake of the plot, he ends up having a heart attack, and his ability to wrestle becomes severely compromised, and I think forcing himself to slow down kind of makes him start to think about the things that he's sacrificed in his life to continue on that path.
Yeah.
And he tries to develop his relationship with his daughter. I'm not going to spoil how the movie turns out because it's fairly recent, but I highly, highly recommend it. I think Rourke should have at least been nominated for an Oscar for that. Was he nominated?
No,
he was nominated, but he didn't win.
He lost to Sean Penn
for Milk. And I think a lot of people thought that was a pretty controversial pick.
Sean Penn was great.
Yeah.
But Mickey Rourke.
And one thing that's touching is you can see, if you ever listen to the Golden Globe speech, because I think Rourke won the Golden Globe for this.
Yeah.
If you see his speech for that, he's like a kid level nervousness. Like, you could see how much he appreciates the fact that he was given the opportunity, like, given a second chance because of all the relationships he supposedly burned in Hollywood when he was on his, not crusade, but he was on kind of his, like, personal demolition path.
Mm-hmm.
The speech is really, really good. It's about 3 minutes, and I recommend you listen to it. But yeah, because he won the Golden Globe for it. We were saying he was nominated for the Oscar. He didn't win that, but people were thinking that he definitely was essentially the leader for that. And then since then, I guess he's kind of gone back to the similar...
The Iron Man 2.
Yeah, he did Iron Man 2. But I guess...
Expendables.
Yeah, it's true.
A little bit part.
But it seems like for the most part, he's sort of, I think, at his own volition, kind of redeveloped that reputation for being difficult.
It's like the 90s part 2.
Yeah.
He went back to boxing.
Which...
Did straight to DVD movies.
you know, maybe you can't. Maybe those things are not. What is the phrase? I don't want to say. Maybe those things are mutually inclusive. Maybe you have to have one for the other. You know, like there are great performances that are marred by some tragedy, but.
You think he could come back again?
Oh, I mean, the talent is still there. You know, it's just a matter of if he feels like he should. I don't know. Again, this is all speculative. I don't know what his actual motivations for doing a lot of these things were. But you could kind of get some insight into Rourke if you watch The Wrestler, because like we were saying, he rewrote a lot of the script, and it reflects a lot of his personal life, at least the amount that we really know about, pretty well. If you're asking, like, is it possible for him to give a good performance? I mean, that was only 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. You know, he could come back and deliver another crazy performance. There were some movies in his heyday before he took a hiatus that he turned down.
Oh yeah.
So
he's probably more known for the movies he's turned down.
The movies he was in. That's probably true.
Unfortunately,
because everybody's heard of these movies, nobody's heard of a lot of movies he was in.
And like we were saying earlier, like he had the goods to do, you know, big budget movies and low budget movies.
Yeah.
And some of the movies he's turned down are like.
So
let's start from the 80s.
So I think this is probably roughly in chronological order. So supposedly he turned down 48 Hours, Platoon, Top Gun, Beverly Hills Cop, Rain Man, Silence of the Lambs, and Pulp Fiction.
Imagine if he did all those movies as well. He would have been like the biggest actor.
Was he supposed to be Travolta or Willis in Pulp Fiction? I think he was
Pulp Fiction? Bruce Willis.
Okay. Can you... Gosh, dude.
He would have killed him.
He was supposed to be Buffalo Bill in Silence of the Lambs. Can you imagine... The guy that played Buffalo... I'm going to look it up real quick because I looked it up earlier. I forgot because he was great. I want to give him credit.
I think he was supposed to play the cop.
Ted Levine. Was that his name?
I think he was actually supposed to play the cop in Silence of the Lambs, actually, not the killer.
I thought he was supposed to play Buffalo Bill. What, Jodie Foster?
Yeah.
Wait, what? I thought it was Buffalo Bill. But, in any case, throw him in there with Anthony Hopkins and Jodie Foster. Jesus Christ, man. Can you imagine? That would have been... Oh, my God. Rain Man, he's supposed to be Tom Cruise, right?
Tom Cruise's character.
Tom Cruise, or Mickey Rourke and Dustin Hoffman. That would have been so cool to watch. Platoon, he's supposed to be Willem Dafoe, right?
In Platoon? No, he was supposed to play, what's the guy with the scar in his face?
That would have been good. He was good in the movie. He was really good, but, man, I'm thinking any of these movies...
And I think it's Top Gun, he's supposed to play Val Kilmer's character.
Okay. Look, any of these movies, you put him in there, even if the actors that were in the movies otherwise did a great job, I just gush at the thought of what Rourke would have added to them.
Yeah, I know he was supposed to be in Untouchables as well as Kevin Costner's character.
Yeah, dude. And part of why I brought up my personal opinion of why he might have taken the hiatus is because it's related to this in that sense that I almost think, well, no, I do think this, but I think it's almost more likely that he would have been in these roles if he wasn't offered them. Because if you go back to what he was saying where he said he got tired of the fact that he couldn't pick up a drink or pay for a check, it's almost like he got tired of stuff getting handed to him, which seems kind of weird, but I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And if he wasn't offered these, I think maybe he would have gone after them himself. At least the movies that were in the 80s, like Platoon was in the 80s, Top Gun was in the 80s.
So do you think all the movies he's done, he's picked them or he was offered them?
Well, I think that sense of self has probably waned since like the late 90s when he started to have some, I think, probably financial struggle.
Yeah.
Because he definitely, I think, could have walked from Wrestler if Aronofsky was headstrong about not letting him make changes to the script, but he was really thankful that he was able to. I think he's more amicable now. I don't know. Obviously, they'd be very different movies if they were now, too, but I think it'd be more likely that he maybe would accept them now.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily based on his financial situation, but based on how he would perceive that offer. Because I sometimes, I have one of my best friends, he used to get annoyed with me because I wouldn't accept his, hospitality when I was at his place or whatever. He'd, offer me things, and I would say no because I wanted to be accommodating and not take up space for him. He'd be like, Matt, you're being an ass right now because you're not taking the things that I'm, offering for you. And I was like, huh, I never thought of that. So maybe Rourke was a little bit like that. I don't know. But I think regardless, regardless of what could have been, there is still what was.
Yeah, it should be at least be thankful for what he put out.
Yeah, and you definitely need to see Body Heat. At least his scene. I think the whole movie's good, but at least his scene. Body Heat, Diner. That's one of my favorite movies of all time now. And that's a hard list. It sounds dumb, but that's a hard list for me to put movies on. Diner's one of my favorite movies of all time. Pope of Greenwich Village is great. I can't speak for Rumblefish because I haven't seen that.
That's a good one.
But I heard it was good.
That's a good one.
Nor can I speak for Heaven's Gate.
Haven't seen that one.
That was supposedly a disaster, financially at least, I think, wasn't it? That and Year of the Dragon? Or maybe Heaven's Gate wasn't.
Heaven's Gate was a disaster.
It seems like Cimino was hot after Deer Hunter, but everything else kind of flopped financially.
That destroyed what was that studio? United Artists? That
right.
bankrupted it.
Yeah. But Year of the Dragon, again, if you want to see his performance, it's worth seeing for that because he's good in it.
Just watch his 80s movies, guys. Just watch him.
Watch his 80s movies and also watch The Wrestler. Wrestler is really, really good.
And Harley Davidson.
That's, I almost just want to get more people's opinions on that to see if what I say actually makes any sense because it is a stupid-ass movie. But it's fun. Ultimately, it's, what do you value? It was enjoyable. But it still pisses me off that it was so stupid because it didn't need to be. But yeah, his body of work in the 80s is phenomenal. I mean, it's kind of scary that people don't know about a lot of the movies.
Maybe in time, people will actually look back at him. Or, like, God forbid, like, he dies anytime soon, people actually look back at his career.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens, like, when artists, not just actors, just, like, musicians, when they die, people actually listen to their music once they're dead. So maybe, not anytime soon, but when he passes away, people actually look back and be like, huh, this guy was really good.
What did we miss?
Yeah, like, damn, like, this guy was a shit.
Yeah.
He was, how do you say, it's like, his 80s stuff, like his acting was very method.
Oh, he seemed
very natural.
Yeah.
Like those, like a lot of 80s movies. When you think of the 80s, think of like movies like E.T., The Goonies, Top Gun. What else? Like from the 80s, like Indiana Jones.
Die
Hard. Commando, Predator.
Yeah.
Rambo. Those are very very. What do you say? Like very. I don't want to say cheesy, but like
they're high concept. I think high concept applies to those. They're not meant to be difficult to understand. They're meant to be very easy to follow, and it's kind of like relative eye candy.
I think he's a 70s actor
who was
stuck in the 80s.
That can make sense.
Like if he acted in the 70s, like with De Niro,
if he had the opportunity to be in more like revisionist filmmakers' work,
he would have been thriving.
I could see that. He's kind of a displaced actor.
He was just stuck in. He's just the right actor, but in the wrong time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I think that's it. What we're gonna say for Rourke. Matt told me to get into it because he said it's his favorite actor. It's like the reason that you got into acting.
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, unless he said that, I wouldn't have known that any of these movies existed. Obviously, except for The Wrestler and Pope of Greenwich Village because I'd seen those, but can't recommend any, his performances in these movies enough. So that's pretty much gonna wrap for Mickey Rourke. So you want to just talk a little bit about some movies that we've seen lately? I do want to make one, if it's cool. I want to say one thing to kind of clarify. The last podcast we talked about the intentional fallacy, and I think I mentioned that I wasn't specifically confident that I could articulate exactly why I felt the way that I felt about that. So just to recap, the intentional fallacy is the idea that it is wrong to think that the only interpretation of a film that holds any weight, this is specifically for film, the only interpretation of a film that holds any weight is what the director of that film intended it to mean. So I personally tend to err on that side, and I started thinking about why, and I think the reason I feel that way is because ultimately what you think the movie meant is speculation. But in my mind, I think learning about what the director meant the film to mean tells you something valuable about them, their upbringing, and the community that they live in. you can indirectly infer how they are or the people they associate themselves with through maybe what they intended that to mean. That's my personal opinion. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because it's like as soon as we finished that episode, I was thinking about it, and like a week later I came to that realization that I think that's why I feel that way. I don't know if you have anything to mention about that. I just wanted to bring that up. We can talk about movies otherwise.
No, let's
Okay.
close it off.
Okay. So do you want to talk about just like a couple movies that you've seen recently?
So what have I seen recently?
Tenet.
Tenet?
It's a French film.
No, I've never heard of that one.
Tenet. I saw the first Exorcist when I was like 13, and I had really high expectations for that because my mom has always said that that's the scariest movie she'd ever seen, and it kind of has that reputation. When I finally saw it, I think I built my expectation up a little too much because I was disappointed. After the fact, though, I was thinking that it would have been amazing to be alive in 1973 when that came out and see the initial reaction.
Yeah.
But I saw The Third Exorcist, directed by William Peter Blatty, the guy that wrote the book and I guess wrote the screenplays for these movies. I don't know if he was associated with the second one, which supposedly was a fucking horrible film. But he directed this movie. It's got George Scott and Brad Dourif in it. Also the guy that plays Damien Karras, the priest who jumps out of the window at the end of The First Exorcist. He comes back briefly. But, oh my god. If you haven't seen The Third Exorcist, you don't need to see the second one, because I think the third one is meant to sort of overlook that one, because it's seemingly nobody wants to think that. That's like the Star Wars Christmas special, I think, of Exorcist movies. But The Third Exorcist is incredible. George Scott is great in the movie. Some people think he overdoes a little bit, but I think he's great. There's really good comedic timing, shot like surprisingly. There's some great scares. And Brad Dourif gives probably one of the most overlooked performances I've ever seen in a movie. Like, Matt, you need to watch him in this movie.
Exorcist 3?
Oh my god. He is incredible in this movie. And one thing that's cool is, even though I didn't love The First Exorcist, it was cool that both the first and the third Exorcist, I think, do a good job of really impressing the severity of the situation that the characters are in. Like, somehow, even though it's a possession movie, it's about ghosts, somehow it feels more significant. Mm-hmm. Like there's the situation is more grave that they don't make a mistake and actually accomplish what they need to accomplish. Otherwise, the world is somehow going to end.
Yeah.
That's like the one that stuck out the most to me. That's probably the primary one that I wanted to mention. I've seen some other ones, but nothing that I'm like, whoa, that was great. But what about you?
Honestly, I haven't really seen a whole lot of new movies. Mm-hmm. But I saw a documentary on Amazon. It's based on The Police, the band.
Yeah.
You can find that on Amazon Prime right now. And the documentary is called "Can't Stand Losing You." Mm. It's like a title from one of their songs. Mm-hmm. And the whole documentary is from the perspective of the guitarist. What's his name? His name is Andy Summers. And he's the guitarist of the band. And it's from his point of view, like the story of how, they began during their prime and how they broke up. Because when people hear of the Police, they always think of Sting. And when they hear stories of the Police, they hear stories from his perspective, majority of the time. So it's nice to hear the perspective of the band from the guitarist's perspective. Yeah. Because I feel like he's the least known out of the three. From the bassist, Sting, the drummer, Stuart Copeland, and Andy Summers, the guitarist. But also, it delved into the band, but also his personal life before, during, and after the Police. And, delved a little bit into his photography. So the documentary also dabbed into his photography, showed some of the pictures he took during their tours and after, which is really nice to see. But it was very good story, very well done. Nice to see a different perspective on the band instead of Sting. So I highly recommend that if you're a fan of the Police or you enjoy rock music in general, and you can find that on Amazon Prime.
Nice. Yeah, admittedly, I don't generally tend to divulge in documentary stuff. I pretty much stick to movies for the most part. But I know there's a lot of really, really good documentaries that I should see.
I know what's his face, Peter Jackson's working on a Beatles documentary. Because I know he made a documentary like 3 or 4 years ago called it's World War One.
They Shall Not Grow Old.
Yeah, he like finds old footage and just remasters it.
That was pretty incredible, just like as a technical feat.
Yeah, and he's doing the same thing with the Beatles. I guess he has like 55 hours of like behind the scenes footage of them recording their album Let It Be.
Wow.
And yeah, he's gonna like put it together, remaster it, similar to what was it called again?
They Shall Not Grow Old.
They Should Not Grow Old, and it's coming out in 2021 in August.
Why should that not be what it's called? It's called like World War One or something. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Anyway.
Yeah, They Should Not Grow Old. Yeah, that's the name. Oh, I know I've seen something. Probably haven't. Wow, I'm slacking. I'm a bum.
Nah. We both saw Tenet, but that's a discussion for another time. So we'll probably, if we talk about that, it will be maybe in the next.
Yeah, that'll be its own podcast.
But otherwise, I mean, if that's it, I'm cool with wrapping there, man.
All right,
we're trying to shoot a short film, so we're gonna discuss that I think a little bit after this is done. But we didn't get any comments on the last one. But if in case anybody does see this and they do, yeah. Well, I'm
just comment, like,
no, if
dislike, just do
whatever,
something. Just do something.
Do whatever the fuck you want.
Share it. Whatever.
Put it on your Live Jasmine if you have one of those, or your like share it on Pornhub if you have one of those. If like last time, if there are any questions or comments that anybody has for us, feel free to write them down in the comment section on YouTube. And like I said, I'll try and post all of the things we reference, all the sources that we reference, in the description below. And if there are any of those comments or questions, we will definitely respond to them in the next episode. We will address all of that. But yeah, to anybody who listens, thank you very much. And anything else to say?
Be safe.
Yeah.
Merry Christmas.
Oh yeah.
And have a Happy New Year.
All right, we'll see you guys next Tuesday.